And my wish to you is success and millions and billions.
22 and 49.
Diddy is 49 years old.
Oh, man!
That is a 27-year difference.
She was never supposed to be pregnant, especially not by him. Everyone thought the Lori Harvey story ended when she walked away from Diddy's chaos, that the whispers about his parties were just celebrity gossip. But the leak hits tonight, and it changes everything. Insiders now claim footage exists showing Lori forced into a night with Jay-Z at one of Diddy's so-called freak-offs, and that her silence was bought before the world could connect to the dates. The same insiders point to the 2019 Rock Nation brunch, when Beyoncé's fans swarmed Lori's Instagram for smiling at Jay-Z, to Diddy's federal trafficking charges filed in September 2024, and to a string of lawsuits naming both moguls for filmed encounters and incapacitated guests. One source says Lori disappeared from events for weeks. Another swears the pregnancy was handled quietly after Beyoncé confronted Jay in private. But if that's true, why did Lori suddenly cut off comments? Why did Jay and Diddy close ranks? And why did Beyoncé cancel 2 public appearances the same month? The surface story doesn't fit the reaction, and that's the tell. Because the real scandal isn't who slept with whom. It's who ordered the cameras and who's still holding the footage.
Her mother is 54 years old. Her mother is 5 years older than Puffy.
The first reaction inside the industry isn't outrage. It's calculation. Diddy's people move fast, pulling phones, freezing group chats, sending the usual coded messages that mean stay quiet until we know who's talking. Jay-Z's camp issues no statement, not even a denial, just that familiar wall of polished silence that has always kept the empire clean. Beyoncé's team goes dark. Her stylist cancels 2 public fittings, and the Carters are seen entering their Manhattan office separately for the first time in months. Insiders say the footage that triggered this panic didn't come from a hacker, but from someone inside Diddy's old circle, a person who got tired of being scared. The timing makes sense. Federal agents raided Diddy's LA home last year in connection with trafficking allegations, and the man has been described by former collaborators as obsessed with filming everything. Suddenly, Lori Harvey's months of vanishing from events, the abrupt unfollowing, the whispers about personal recovery look less like heartbreak and more like cleanup. No one confirms the pregnancy, but 2 separate stylists insist she canceled a shoot in late 2019 after being sick for days. The story begins to feel less like coincidence and more like choreography. Everyone remembers those photos from Italy. Lori on Diddy's yacht, smiling beside the man twice her age, just weeks after she'd been seen with his son. Back then, the public laughed it off as another Hollywood fling, but sources now describe that trip as the start of her induction. Diddy was grieving, yes, but also throwing private parties again, the ones later described in lawsuits as elaborate power games. The 2024 legal filings mention recorded encounters with multiple male participants, and though no names are printed, the initials in one complaint matched Jay-Z's. When those filings dropped, Jay's legal team reportedly reached out to Diddy's before the news even broke. One lawyer to another, a preemptive alignment. Lori's name doesn't appear anywhere, but her proximity to both men is now impossible to unsee. Her stepfather, Steve Harvey, allegedly tried to pull her out that same summer, urging her to focus on brand deals. Instead, she flew back to New York for Diddy's white party, where several attendees now claim to have seen her leave through a side entrance after midnight. The detail seems small until you realize that's when the cameras were usually turned off, for everyone except Diddy.
I know so much on how you got where you are, how you stepped on many people.
By early 2020, the facade begins to crack. Lori deletes dozens of photos, turns off comments, and quietly flies to Dubai. The Bayhive interprets her silence as guilt, flooding her old posts with bee emojis, while Beyoncé performs at the Grammys in a gown rumored to have been chosen to remind him who runs this. What nobody talks about publicly is how Jay-Z abruptly canceled a meeting in London that same week. People close to the Carters say the tension was physical. A broken glass, a phone thrown, staff dismissed for overhearing too much. Jay-Z, who built an empire on discretion, suddenly looked cornered. When Diddy's ex Cassie filed her explosive case in 2023, describing years of coercion, those inside the industry already knew what would follow. They'd seen the tapes. The Cassie suit settled almost overnight for undisclosed millions, but it was the federal investigation that came next that rattled everyone. That's when whispers about a second set of recordings began circulating, ones involving younger celebrities who had since reinvented themselves as brand ambassadors and fashion icons. Lori's name was among them, paired with Jay's, always in hushed tones. Here's where the pattern stops pretending. Diddy and Jay-Z's friendship has always been sold as legacy, 2 kings building empires together, but it now reads like a mutual defense pact. They've been connected since the late 1990s, survived nearly identical gun and assault cases, and shared a revolving door of lawyers. When the 2024 amended lawsuit named Jay alongside Diddy for participation in concealment, insiders claim the same publicist managed both statements. It's not about guilt or innocence, it's about control, keeping the narrative locked behind money, NDAs, and fear. What makes this new leak dangerous is its intimacy. Not spreadsheets, not business fraud, but recordings from private nights where the world's most powerful artists became complicit in something they can't spin. That's what Beyonce allegedly found out the hard way. Her team's frantic calls to Diddy's legal office last month suggest she's seen at least part of what's on those drives. The silence that follows feels less like denial and more like strategy. Every brand deal, every streaming contract, every album rollout suddenly depends on keeping a lid on whatever that footage reveals. Industry insiders describe the pressure now as unbearable. Everyone tied to the Roc Nation circle is scrubbing connections, revising histories, rebranding friendships. Photographers who once worked at Diddy's private events are deleting portfolios. One former assistant tells us she was offered 6 figures through an intermediary to remember nothing. Even Lori's recent business moves, her sudden shift toward high-end skincare, her calculated re-entry into public life, feel rehearsed, like steps in an exit plan negotiated long ago. The irony is that none of these people are new to scandal. They're new to losing control of it. What's whispered now is that Diddy's downfall isn't about the parties at all. It's about what those recordings prove about the alliances built on them. And that's where the fear multiplies. If one tape can tie Lori, Jay, and Diddy together, how many others connect the rest of the industry? The more they try to contain it, the louder the silence grows.
Jay?
Yeah.
At this point? It's... I would want, why?
Just that.
Then comes the contradiction no one can explain. If Lori was a victim, why is she still protected? If she wasn't, why does every insider treat her like someone sitting on a bomb? The same people who mocked her as a social climber now rush to defend her character off the record. One source claims she was promised safety in exchange for staying quiet. Another insists she has leverage, enough to finish them all. Beyoncé's continued public composure looks less like forgiveness and more like warning. She performs, smiles, disappears again. Jay-Z launches a new business venture with the usual swagger, but every appearance now carries that tension in the eyes. The look of a man waiting for the next headline. Federal investigators still combing through Diddy's seized hard drives reportedly found unidentified female subjects, labeled by initials. None of it has been confirmed publicly, but inside the industry, everyone already knows who LH means. And if those initials ever match the dates from that brunch, the story doesn't end with scandal, it ends with empire-level collapse. The deeper we go, the more this story starts to look engineered. People inside the industry are whispering that what's happening now isn't a meltdown, it's a cleanup. The same executives who once protected Diddy and Jay-Z are suddenly cooperating with federal investigators, but only after securing immunity deals. That tells you the hierarchy knows how deep this goes. A name keeps surfacing in the background, a former Roc Nation aide who allegedly handled off the books payouts between 2018 and 2021. Insiders say this person delivered envelopes, arranged wellness retreats, and handled silence agreements for those entangled with the two moguls. What makes that alarming is how many of those names were influencers, models, and protégés of the very brands that now cut ties. This isn't scandal at the top, it's an entire network quietly disbanding itself before subpoenas hit. Lawyers call it protection, insiders call it triage. And when you realize that some of those so-called wellness retreats happened at properties now under federal seizure, the theory of coincidence collapses.
But after that major documentary comes out on Diddy, then you're going to start to hear more and more about Jay-Z and his nefarious past, okay?
The Cassie settlement, once framed as closure, now reads like a template. The sum, 8 figures whispered between teams, was never about compensation. It was about containing a system. After that payout, a wave of smaller settlements rippled through the entertainment sector, none of them publicized. One stylist signed hers in March 2024, claiming she'd been filmed without consent during a performance night, years earlier. Another, an assistant, quietly relocated to Europe. Their silence created an illusion of calm, but behind that hush, executives were repositioning. Jay-Z withdrew from several joint ventures that year, citing restructuring, while Beyoncé's foundation abruptly replaced its board. People close to them insist she's bracing for collateral damage, not just personal, but corporate. The kind that can unravel billion-dollar partnerships overnight. This is no longer about rumor or romance, it's about the infrastructure of fame built on agreements no one was supposed to question. When the system starts writing checks that large, it's not protecting a reputation, it's burying evidence. Then come the ghosts of loyalty. Those who once worshipped Diddy now treat his name like poison, and yet none dare speak fully. Former artists from his label have started dropping cryptic lines on social media. One wrote, "You can't erase what's recorded." Another posted a photo of an unmarked USB drive captioned only insurance. It's the same fear in every message. People terrified of what might surface, but more terrified of who might surface it. Sources in LA describe a safe belonging to Diddy's inner circle, supposedly containing footage of influential figures compromising themselves at parties that blended business with indulgence. The list allegedly includes executives, politicians, and philanthropists who owe their power to the very culture these men built. That's the real currency here. Not money, not status, but leverage. The footage was insurance against betrayal, and everyone knew it. Now that Diddy's facing criminal exposure, the leverage turns into liability. If that vault exists, and if it's found, it doesn't just end careers. It rewrites the entire hierarchy of influence.
and he was asking about her, and then he was asking me stuff like, you know, would you be interested in, like, you know, somebody watching? He was just asking some really, really bugged out questions. And I still have those emails. I still have all that, you know? So, like, that's one of the things that I was going to include in the book. I'm just trying to figure out how I would do that.
The silence from the Carters grows heavier as the web tightens. Beyonce's team schedules appearances, cancels them, then reschedules in smaller venues, controlled environments, loyal press. She performs with calculated precision, her lyrics sharpened into messages only insiders seem to understand. Jay-Z, meanwhile, keeps building new partnerships abroad, far from American scrutiny. Those who track these moves say it's less about expansion and more about relocation, an attempt to shift assets and trust structures before the next wave of investigations hits. The irony? Every move he makes to protect the empire draws more attention to the secrets inside it. The Bayhive interprets her composure as grace. Insiders see it as survival. When loyalty becomes a contract term, even a marriage starts to look like a merger. Those who've worked near them describe a quiet paranoia. Phones left outside rooms, meetings ending the moment Diddy's name is mentioned. What used to be whispered as gossip is now treated like classified intelligence. The walls aren't closing in, they're being soundproofed. Old scandals are being reread like warnings. The elevator fight with Solange, once dismissed as family drama, now looks prophetic. People close to her say she knew too much, that her fury wasn't jealousy, but alarm. She'd seen the patterns before, women drawn into Diddy's orbit, branded as muses, discarded when inconvenient. The same sources claim that what happened that night in 2014 wasn't about infidelity. It was about leverage being used against her sister. When you map these moments, the brunch smile, the yacht trip, the quiet settlements, they line up like steps in a ritual of control. None of it is random, and every silence feels purchased. One entertainment lawyer puts it bluntly. They built an empire on loyalty, but loyalty was always a transaction. The public sees style and legacy. Those inside see dossiers and NDAs. It's not that everyone knew. It's that everyone decided knowing was safer than speaking. And the longer you trace it, the clearer it becomes that this isn't a series of scandals. It's a business model collapsing in real time.
What's the best advice they've given you?
Just remember that you're the prize at all times.
Boom.
Best advice.
By the time the FBI releases its next batch of filings, the industry's tone has shifted from denial to dread. Music executives start calling emergency summits, lawyers brief clients on crisis protocols, and private security firms receive calls about data retrieval. Nobody says what's being retrieved, but everyone understands. There's talk of offshore servers, missing footage, and encrypted backups stored under different company names. People who once built brands on transparency now act like fugitives from their own image. Lori Harvey, still silent, becomes an unintentional symbol of the machine's fallout. Every post, every photo, every appearance analyzed for coded meaning. She doesn't need to speak. Her existence in the public eye is a reminder enough that someone got out. But insiders warn that no one ever really leaves that world clean. Power protects itself through fear, and fear spreads faster than any scandal. The empire may still stand, but the foundation is cracking, and what's leaking through those cracks isn't just rumor. It's proof of how fame feeds on silence. And yet, even as the story spirals outward, the question returns to that unseen footage. Some say it's already been copied, traded among insiders like currency. Others insist it's gone, destroyed when the raids began. But the behavior of everyone involved tells another story. Too many sudden vacations, too many rebranded projects, too many retirements for coincidence. Every new leak reignites speculation about what's still hidden. The people who once shaped culture now look trapped by it. The public is left piecing together clues from their moves, every deleted post, every public apology, every shift in alliances. The silence between these actions is deafening, and it's in that silence that the real truth lives. Not in what's confessed, but in what's too dangerous to say. So what happens when loyalty turns into liability? When the footage everyone swore didn't exist starts circulating in the right inboxes? Does Beyonce hold the line, or does she burn the empire to save herself? Does Lori finally speak, or does she let the machine eat itself from the inside? And what if Diddy's vault isn't the only one? Drop your thoughts in the comments, every theory, every angle, because the closer this story gets to the center, the more it feels like we're all standing on the edge of the same secret.